Now let's talk more about some of the symptoms of lactose intolerance. So again, there's a laundry list here, and what we did is we took, this is actually from the journal Science Progress, and so what they did is they did a huge thesis on the quantity of symptoms that are related, like quantitatively, how many of the people that have lactose intolerance have certain kinds of symptoms. And so what you can see here over here is 100% abdominal pain, 100% gut distension, 100% tummy rumbling, 100% flatulence or excessive gas. Then we have 30%, rather, not 30, but 70% diarrhea and 30% constipation. So constipation less common. Nausea, 78%. Vomiting, 78%. And then we have other symptoms like headaches and lightheadedness and 86%. Loss of concentration, poor short-term memory, 82%. Chronic severe tiredness, 63%. Muscle pain, 71%. Joint pain and swelling and stiffness, 71%. A lot of people don't realize dairy intolerance can create a whole lot of symptoms that are not related to your bowels directly, right? I mean, this top list is mostly bowel, right? GI tract. This bottom list, headaches, poor short-term memory, chronic fatigue, muscle joint pain, development of allergies and mouth ulcers. Well, mouth ulcers go up here, but these other symptoms are not really linked to the bowel. So a lot of people would never even know they're lactose intolerant. Why am I tired all the time? Why do my joints hurt all the time? Again, these are symptoms that are reported in patients that have lactose intolerance. We also get heart arrhythmias as a symptom, you can see here. So, and then under allergies specifically, so when we talk about allergies here, we're talking about a lot of it is skin issues, right? So eczema, pruritus, but also allergies in terms of the sinus cavity where you feel stuffed up. Okay, so what do we do? I mean, what do you do if you're lactose intolerant? You can get a diagnosis through a breath test if that's something that you really want to seek out. But there's a top list of strategies that I would suggest that you utilize and do if you are lactose intolerant. Obviously, the first one is the obvious, right? Is don't eat dairy. Cut it out. Now, some people say, well, there's just no way I'm going to do that. We'll talk about a potential option for you. But I mean, if your body can't digest it, the best thing that you can do is to cut it out of your diet. And those of you who've read No Grain, No Pain, you also, if you get to phase 2 of that diet, dairy is something we cut out so that the body has the potential to heal. Remember that one of the things gluten causes dairy or lactose intolerance. So if you cut out, sometimes what happens when you cut out gluten, if you cut it out, then if one of the things that happens is it improves your bacteria, it improves your microbiome when you cut out gluten. Okay, it reduces immune overreactivity. It seals the gut, or helps to seal the gut from being permeable or over-permeable. And one of the things that happens is your gut heals, right? So the gut lining starts to heal. And when the gut lining heals, guess where lactase is made? It's made in the gut lining. It's made by your brush border. So if this gut lining heals, then sometimes what happens is we start producing lactase again, and then we can develop a tolerance to dairy, as opposed to an intolerance. This is a possibility. Now, there are caveats to adding dairy to your diet if you're on a grain-free, gluten-free diet. And one of the biggest caveats is if you're going to try to attempt to add dairy back in, you've got to add in healthy dairy. You can't add in junk dairy. So the dairy you add in has got to be healthy. What does that mean? What does healthy dairy look like? Number one, my advice is it should be from A2 producing cows. A2, if you don't know the difference between A1 and A2, go look it up or go watch my master class on dairy. A2 refers to the type of casein protein in the dairy. Casein, A1 casein mimics gluten, A2 casein does not, so you're safer with A2 casein. Number 2, it should be organic. Number 3, it should be grass fed. The cows should be getting sunshine and eating grass, not shoved in a pen, eating grain all day with genetically modified nonsense in it. Like these 3 rules should be ideally followed. So where do you get something like this? It's hard to find this in the grocery store. This is where, if you add all these up, you go to a local farm. You support a local farming community where they actually have A2 cows in their feed. If they feed any extra feed in the winter, it's coming from an organic feed source, and that the cows predominantly use grass as their major staple in their diet. These are the general rules if we're trying to find healthy dairy. Now, if any of one of these rules don't apply, it's my advice that you just avoid it altogether. It's not a good idea. But that's something that can be done, again, if the dairy is healthy. What some people choose to do is they choose to use dairy products. There's a couple of different major brands, and what they have in them is they've got pre-digested the lactose using lactase. Lactase, again, is an enzyme that breaks down lactose. And you can use some of those products, but are they A2 milk? Are they organic? And are they grass-fed? And the answer is, I've never seen a commercially available product that fits those rules. You could, if you find a product that you want to use and you want to add you could add lactase as a supplemental into your diet, and some people do this. Now, I will say it the same way I talk about gluten. There are enzymes on the market that degrade or digest or break down or help reduce the protein peptide bonds in gluten, making it less toxic. It's the same thing here. The supplements that supplemental lactase that can break down lactose. Some people are severely intolerant. If you are one of them, don't do this. This is more along the lines of somebody who's supplementing. It's more along the lines for somebody who gets mild indigestion type symptoms associated with the consumption of dairy, especially if you notice if you can drink like a quarter of a cup of something or eat a quarter of a cup of something, but when you go over that, it's like all bets are off in terms of bloating and gas and indigestion, etc. So for those of you with kind of a more mild issue, as long as the quality of the dairy fits the rules, you can use a supplemental lactase to help you break that down, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, provided, again, that it's not making you sick in other ways, provided you don't have all those other symptoms that I was talking about tonight that are also associated with lactose intolerance. Because if you're struggling with all those things, you need to quit trying to keep the food in your diet and you need to get to the root of why you can't have it, why your gut is so broken that you're incapable of properly processing, digesting, keeping it from spreading across your bloodstream through intestinal permeability or a leaky gut. So again, you can supplement lactase. We actually have something called Dairy Shield, which is rich in the enzyme lactase for this purpose. The other thing that you can do and that you can supplement with that for many people find helpful, and actually let me go back because I want to show you, I skipped over a study that I wanted to show you, and that's probiotics. Probiotics, so if you look here in this particular paper published in Journal of Nutrition and Intermediary Metabolism, you can see this was a review article, okay? So what they did is they took multiple different studies looking at predominantly at different strains of bifidobacterium. You see here bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. And they tested to see how people did when supplementing with these particular probiotics. And so what you can see here, supplementation of yogurt and bifidobacteria in lactose intolerant subjects modified the metabolic activities of the colonic microbiota and alleviates symptoms in lactose intolerant subjects. So again, alleviating symptoms. We see the same thing in this particular species, is that it's alleviation of some gastrointestinal symptoms in lactose intolerance. And down here with lactobacillus, chronic constipation and maldigestion in men with lactose malabsorption improved. L-reuteri shows positive association by reducing nausea, flatulence, and diarrhea in lactose intolerance. Again, each one of these studies shows some benefit of using the different species of lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. So this is just another avenue where supplementation. Now, I'm not a big fan of supplementing so you can do something bad for you. I'm more of a fan of supplementing for health so that you can restore your health. so that what your body couldn't tolerate before, you might be able to tolerate now. And this is one of those areas where dairy, in my experience, 21 years in a clinical practice setting, I find that a lot of people can retolerate dairy once they've healed their gut, once they've healed the brush border from years of gluten exposure, if they introduce it properly. Meaning, if you're going to reintroduce dairy, those 3 rules that I mentioned earlier, the A2 milk, the organic milk, or the A2, the organic, and the grass-fed rules are very, very critical and very, very important. And if you're not doing it that way, you're running a risk of potential autoimmune reactivity through the casein molecule. You're also running a risk, if you try to add it back in too early, that you overstress the GI tract, which is already overstressed, and end up suffering indefinitely. So I hope that gives you some clarity around lactose intolerance versus dairy allergy, that you can be allergic to dairy but not intolerant to lactose. You can also be lactose intolerant but not allergic to dairy. You can also be both. Okay, so it's important too, if you're making that decision of trying to add dairy back in a healthy way, that you clarify that you're not allergic to it, because if you're allergic to it, no digestive enzyme in the world is going to help you overcome an actual allergic response. You need to avoid it. If you're intolerant to it, again, is it a temporary secondary intolerance, caused by digestive damage over years, or is it a primary intolerance where you'll never be able to regain tolerance? That's something that you want to get clarity on so that you can make an intelligent decision about whether or not you want to add dairy back in to your diet as a source of potential food. There are a number of other aspects around dairy we could discuss, but I think if we get too deep into that, we'll run out of time, and I definitely won't have time to answer your question. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below, and as always, thanks for tuning in.